Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt, who is a little more amped up than usual even. Dad, how are you doing?
Doing well. You know, it's a dance party here. Go Pack, go. Go Pack, go.
Those of you at
For
home...
all of you who are happy there's no video to go with this audio, I'm dancing.
Yes, he is doing a little shimmy, doing a little shoulder shake, because the Packers, Dad, win. Wild card weekend. Packers win 48-32 over the Cowboys in Dallas, in Jerry World, in AT&T Stadium. Any of the three will do. The Packers will win either way. Packers win. The Cowboys had not lost in 16 straight games over pretty much almost 2 whole seasons worth in Dallas. And the Packers just go in there and kick their ass up and down the field for the whole game.
Fun fact?
Yeah, but this
Packers
can be
have more playoff wins at AT&T Stadium than the Cowboys do.
This can be an entire podcast of fun facts. Any fact from this game is inherently a fun fact. I mean, what is it? The Packers, it's the most points scored on Dallas in a playoff game, I think, ever. I think did it tie the most points for a playoff game for the Packers ever?
That's what I heard. It was a tie. First, I thought it was Seth Rogen, but
I think it tied the one against the Cardinals in like 2009, maybe. I think I will double check that. But every single part about this podcast is going to be fun. The Packers win. They are moving on next week. They will be playing in Santa Clara versus the Niners on Saturday night. We will be here to give you a pregame for that pod. So just, keep your feeds tuned for that. But today we are focusing on this win. Improbable win. Packers become the youngest team to ever win a playoff game in NFL history, or at least until as long as they keep those stats. But Dad, I mean, what a fun game. Do you want to give us just like your gut reaction, like while you were watching it? Because we didn't watch this one together. So what was going through your brain as you watched it? And when did you actually feel like, wow, what is like this? We're really putting it on them right here.
When did I really feel like we were putting it on? I think when
the pick six. That was when I was like, damn.
I was going to say
just
the pick six, because the other thing, at that point, I was still watching it on stream. And I had seen a tweet about pick six. Wait, is somebody begging for a pick six? Is somebody hoping for a pick six? Like, this can't have really happened, can it? It's like, no, it was actually a pick six. And after that, then I switched to the antenna, so I'd be watching it as close to live as possible.
I mean, so that pick six made it 27 to nothing, that is. And then it was 27-7 going into half. Cowboys had the ball coming out of half. I was a little bit like, okay, if they score here, it's a 2-score game. Like that is still a game with
less
2 quarters
than 2
left.
touchdowns and extra points.
Yes, exactly. And so I was like, okay, like that's a game. And then they, held them to a field goal, and the Packers just march right down and score another touchdown. And then the Packers just march right down and score another touchdown. And then the Packers just march right down and score another touchdown. I was like, wow. Like, we are just, like, full pedal to the metal. Like, don't let up until we let up a little in the fourth quarter, but I'm not even going to trip about that. I know some people I'm not going to lie. I got a little stressed. But realistically, we didn't really need to, but we kind of needed to. It was one of those things. You were a little stressed, too. It wasn't just me, right? I know.
I started pacing around behind the couch when it got down there. It's like, okay, I gotta get my feet, because it's not 0. I didn't want.
No,
I didn't want it
0.
to ever. I didn't want to have to live through an onside kick when we were only up by 1 score.
Especially after we barely recovered 2 onside kicks already.
Both of them.
And our special teams is so world renowned for its like reliability, But anyway, we're going to talk about each phase of this game going forward. Let's start though with the downer news of this one, and that is that we did have a few injuries in this game. The worst of which was JJ Enagbare, who tore his ACL in this game, which really sucks for him. He was putting together a really nice second season as a rotational edge rusher. It's a big part of what they were doing in terms of keeping those guys fresh. And it sucks also because it's, the type of injury that's going to trail into next year too, which it's just, it's all bad. It sucks. But yeah, so that's really tough. Beyond that, there were a few other injuries as well. So we're, our thoughts are with, JJ Enagbare and his family. That's a really tough injury right there. Isaiah McDuffie left with another head and neck injury. I'm going to keep an eye on that one in practice this week in terms of injury reports, because, he was getting a good amount of run before he did go out with that injury, and we'll talk about that later. And then Jair Alexander tweaked his ankle. LaFleur said today that Jair would not have been able to come back in the game. We're recording here Monday night. So, just keep in mind of that going forward when you're listening to this. This is just the information we have now. But that's the injury report right there. But Dad, should we get into the rest of this game breakdown? Because, now that we got like the downer stuff out of the way, this is a game of like relentless positives and like almost nonstop positives. I do think, maybe we go, so let's offense, defense. And then we were joking before, let's go good offense, bad defense, good defense. So we could end on a positive note. And then we both remembered that we always end with special teams, which, ending with a positive note is maybe not as accurate in that one since we're always ending on special teams. But maybe someday it'll be a positive. But Dad, let's talk about the game. What did you have as the biggest moment of the game? We usually go by ESPN win probability. So what play swung the game the most?
So Aaron Jones' second touchdown run took it from a 60% chance of Green Bay winning to a 72.2% chance of Green Bay winning it. So a 12.2% swing. And the Packers never really looked back. The interesting thing is it's so early in the game because, after midway through the second quarter, just before halftime, the win probability was like stayed in the 90s the whole rest of the game. So there wasn't much room for it to swing.
That's the thing is I was looking at how you and I both said we were getting a little nervous in that fourth quarter when it was like a 32-point game with 6 minutes left and they got it to 16 with a minute 30. And the win probability is still 99.98. Or something, or it was 99 point. I think I looked 99.89 per NFL Fast Star was the lowest it got. So it did dip below 99.9. If that's enough to get you a little bit shaky there. But no, yeah, the Packers.
I really wish they had gotten that first down so they could have just kneeled it out there.
Oh, me too. But I really wish they got that first down so Jordan Love could have maintained his perfect passer rating.
Maintained his 158.3.
But since we're talking about that, and we're about to talk about the offense anyways, let's go into the offense, and let's start with what they're saying, Dad. This is where we have, a quote. We'll have a quote for each side of the ball. What are the Packers players or coaches or whoever saying about the offense in this one?
Yeah, so I think this was from today's press conference, and I got this from Tom Silverstein. Matt LaFleur said, regarding Love's touchdown pass to Dontavian Wicks, it's that was one of those plays you sit there and watch that all day. And I know exactly what he means. Yeah. And he wasn't talking just about the throw, but also pre-snap about how he was praising Love for how he set the protection. I think particularly about what Tucker Kraft's assignment was on the blocking scheme there.
To me, that play is just the perfect, so step one, Love identifies that the defense, Dallas, is going to a cover zero blitz, which means everyone is getting sent except for one guy per each receiver. So each guy is going to be in a one-on-one coverage situation. So Love identifies that and, sets the protection appropriately. Two, they check to, I think it's a check, or they already had the perfect play called, but they check to a play that's a cover zero, essentially killer. So when you're in cover zero, you're not going to have any middle field help as a corner or as a man-to-man defender like you would in a lot of other coverages. There's not going to be any safety to help you to the middle of the field. So what they do there is Jaden Reed is on the outside and Dontavian Wicks is in the slot. And Jaden Reed has Stephon Gilmore on him. Jaden Reed goes in motion to the point where he is now inside of Dontavian Wicks. And so then the guy who was guarding Dontavian Wicks just bumps over to guard Reed because now he's the inside receiver. And then Gilmore takes Wicks. But what that motion does, is because Gilmore was the outside corner, he's left with no choice but to play Dontavian Wicks with outside leverage, which means he's to the outside of Wicks and he's kind of guarding any kind of out route. And so because of that motion, he's stuck giving outside leverage to a one-on-one route with no inside help.
And there's no safety on the inside to help.
And then so that's that's the second part of it where it's perfect play call and perfect, motion to put the defense in a disadvantageous situation. And whether that was a check or not, I'm not sure. I couldn't tell if he actually canned the play or not. And then finally, what a frickin' throw with the guy in his lap.
The guy coming right in his face is just another one of those back foot throws, perfectly placed.
Perfectly placed, just right on the face mask, away from the defender.
I think Love only had one off-target throw all game.
Well, let's talk about this game because let's start with the positives on offense because for me it's Jordan Love 1A, B, C, D. Don't get me wrong.
You beat me too at writing up the Jordan Love part. So
hey, you snooze, you lose. But yeah, so the thing that I wanted to say, first of all, offense overall was electric. 0.356 EPA per play on offense. For reference, the league leader is 0.179, so almost twice as good as the best offense in the league this year. which was the Niners. Then even if you take out the plays where the Packers had less than a 99.9% chance of winning, it was all the way up at 0.423 EPA per play, which is just, I mean, so pretty much when the game wasn't, they're going to win 999 out of every 1,000 times they're in that scenario, they were stomping even more on offense. And you wanted to mention something there. But
yeah, it's just that, for all the time that they were actually focused on trying to score and not just on killing the clock, they were absolutely on fire. What is this
They scored 6
2.5
touchdowns.
times.
They scored 6 touchdowns on their
leader?
first 7. They scored 6 touchdowns on their first 7 possessions. On their first 7 possessions, they scored 6 touchdowns. I mean that, and then a pick 6 thrown in there too.
Plus a pick 6.
Yeah. So I mean, just an annihilation. And like I said, the big story here is Jordan Love, 1ABC. He was 16 of 21 for 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had a perfect passer rating until they had already taken him out for Sean Clifford and they had to bring him back in. And Matt LaFleur said later, he's like, yeah, I shouldn't have pulled my starters that early. That's on me. But anyway, 1.13 EPA per dropback, expected points added per dropback. So some of these numbers are insane. To put that into context, that 1.13 EPA per dropback, ludicrous number. It is the 11th highest EPA per dropback in a single game with at least 20 dropbacks for a quarterback since 1999. And it might be back even further because that's just as far back as the NFL FastStar data goes that I'm pulling this from. It is the second highest EPA per dropback in a playoff game with a minimum of 10 dropbacks since 1999. Only Peyton Manning in 2004, where he had 5 touchdowns and like 360 yards on 26 attempts, was higher. Like, that's how ridiculous Jordan Love was in this game. When it mattered on third down, so like when the game like was in reach, which, not super long. Hey. He was 4 of 5 on third down for 62 yards and a touchdown. He was PFF's highest graded passer in the first 4 games of Wildcard Weekend. We don't have the numbers for either the Pittsburgh Buffalo game or for the Eagles Buccaneers game, but I would imagine they're not going to be much higher than that. Some numbers per PFF in terms of when he was pressured and when he was not. So when he was kept clean, he was 11 of 14 for 120 yards and a touchdown. That's 8.6 yards per attempt. When he was pressured, he was 5 of 7 for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's over 20 yards an attempt. So that didn't work. So even when he was pressured, that wasn't going well for them. And then blitzed versus not blitzed. When he wasn't blitzed, he was 10 of 13 for 143 yards and a touchdown. And then when he was blitzed, he was 6 of 8 for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it didn't really matter what they were throwing at him all day. Pretty much he was automatic. And then by depth of target, when he was targeting the deep part of the field, that's 20 plus yards in the air, he was 4 of 5 for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was 4 of 5 from 10 to 19 yards as well for 90 yards. He was 6 of 9 short for 38 yards and a touchdown. And really the only part of the field he didn't throw well to was behind the line of scrimmage on screens. And just, the plays that are supposed to be kind of gimme plays, like just schemed up ones, those are the only plays that didn't really work for the Packers were screens that they called. Everything else was just
he completed both. He still completed both of them.
And he still completed both of them. But those are like the only plays that didn't go for just ridiculous gains. And I mean, Dad, he was so freaking insane in this game. I mean, just he was ludicrous. Do you have anything you wanted to add for him? Because it was impressive.
I didn't need a sound effect for here, get a Luda.
But no, it wasn't. Was it not insane? Was it not insane?
Well, it's like the number of those throws with somebody in his face or off of his back foot, half jumping in the air. It didn't matter.
No, that's what I was saying, because I'll talk about later. Like, I actually initially came into breaking down these numbers, and I was like, I feel like the offensive line played really well. We talk about like Micah Parsons only had 1 pressure, and he had the lowest pressure percentage or pressure rate of his career so far in a game. And it's like, they didn't give up a sack. And then you look at the numbers, like Jordan Love was pressured on 7 of his 21 dropbacks, like 33% of his dropbacks, he was pressured. And like, he was just dicing them up and didn't take a single sack. And a lot of that has, the offensive line was good, like handling Parsons and not letting him beat them. But Love was just handling pressure so well. I mean, to be pressured on 33% of your dropbacks and not take a sack is very impressive. And it's not like his time to throw was crazy either. It was only like 2.7 something, I think.
Yeah, the pressure to sack ratio is,
0.
Insane.
0. Yeah, crazy.
I saw somebody tweet somewhere, it was like the last, 4 or 5, 6 weeks. So He's basically playing at an MVP level.
21 touchdowns and 1 interception in his last, 9 games is it now? I think, yeah, it was 18-1 through 8 and 19. Yeah, 9 games now. I mean, it's like, what is it? The highest passer rating, like for a playoff debut ever, I think. Passer rating doesn't matter. Ignore that stat. But it's always fun to just reference things.
But yeah, it was the best ever. It didn't have to be 158.3. It was still the best for a debut ever.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not just him though. Like, so let's talk about Jordan Love, and let's also talk about Matt LaFleur, because his game planning today, I mean, he coached circles around Dan Quinn. He coached absolute circles around Dan Quinn. 2 things I wanted to point out. So just as a point of like evidence towards, how well he coached the passing game in this one on offense, I'm just going to look at separation created for players. This is per next gen stats. I'm going to be like, hey, this is indicating that he's getting players open. Nothing indicates that more than the Y League play. And I don't know if you saw this, but they run the one to Musgrave, where there's just actually not someone. It was the most open a player has been all year, apparently, per like the chips in the shoulder pads.
By all of the all the measurements they've done. Because it was funny. It was right after they talked about how, I think it was whoever was announcing, said like, well, they really need to sell out against the run, so it doesn't matter. And then all of a sudden, there's Musgrave went for 30 yards downfield with nobody near him.
Well, to me, you know what it kind of looked like? It looked so similar to the throwback screen they did in week 1 versus the Bears. And you can see, like, Aaron Jones is over there to the right, and there's like a wall of linemen. And a Cowboys player, like, just shoots upfield, like a bullet for that, like, for the one to Aaron Jones, like, because he's thinking that it's going to be that, the one crow hop that he threw to Aaron Jones.
I know his play.
And then you just see the ball go just totally different way. And then there's just no one else there.
Put so much air under it because, like, I got to make sure that wherever I throw this, he's going to have time to get under it.
It didn't matter. Yeah, and plus he was getting hit at the same time. But just to circle back to Matt LaFleur, to put these numbers that I'm about to say in perspective, league average separation is 2.95 yards per target, that is. So this is the average yards of separation per times you're targeted. And the league leader amongst receivers is 4.5. In this game, Dobbs had over 5 yards of separation per target on 6 targets, and Musgrave had 9.38 yards of separation per target on 3 targets.
Did you hear the other LaFleur comment, like Musgrave stayed on his feet?
Yes, the cheer in the locker room for the Musgrave stayed on his feet. And the thing is, that's how I felt as a fan, too. So clearly they're talking about it because the running joke is that he runs like Bambi. And he falls over his feet all the time.
Bambi on ice, that is.
Bambi on ice. And then also I just wanted to talk about, Matt LaFleur. So I think that indicates some really awesome play calling in the pass game, the fact they were able to get such good separation for their receivers. And then in the run game, yards before contact, these numbers are per PFF. And that's kind of how I'm in, like, just kind of pointing towards why I think that he called a very nice run game as well, is that Aaron Jones averaged 2.55 yards before contact per attempt. For reference, amongst 78 running backs, so that's 25% of all running backs in the league this year, on this season, 2.55 would be behind only Keaton Mitchell and Devon Achane, who are very different styles of running back and are much more like not as high usage running backs as Aaron Jones. So I think that was very impressive. They hit him a ton of times with that split flow where everyone looks like they're zone blocking left, and then the tight end comes back to the right, assuming you're running it that way. And the tight end comes back, cuts the edge on the opposite side, and then the running back just takes, in this case it was always Aaron Jones, takes the gap created by that guy slamming out and taking the edge guy out, and then the just wall of massive human beings taking out the rest of the line. And that was what they got on, I think it was Jones's 3rd touchdown. That's how they got that one. But yeah, no, it was just a coaching masterclass from Matt LaFleur. Amazing game from Jordan Love. I just felt like those two needed to be mentioned in tandem with one another. Sorry, I've been talking so much, Dad, but
that's what I just thought. Maybe I will go. Can I jump in?
Of course.
Following
yes.
with
Sorry,
what I have on Aaron Jones.
Yapping.
Because you got some other stuff, but let me just jump in on the Aaron Jones stuff.
He was great.
So he came in and leading all Dallas playoff opponents in yards per game ahead of Barry Sanders and Walter Payton, and he maintained it now over like 4 games, not just 3, with 118 yards and 3 TDs. Plus, he had a catch for 13 yards. He now has 4 straight games over 110 yards per game and over 5 yards per carry. He had a success rate in the game, so that's getting at least I think 40% what you need on first down, 60%
on second down, 100% on
either
third or
getting
fourth.
a first down or touchdown on third or fourth.
Yep.
And so his success rate in this game was 62%. This would lead the league for all running backs with at least 40 carries in the season. So that's better than anybody's done over the full season. He had his best offensive grade of the season per PFF, and he forced 4 missed tackles, his 4th game in a row with at least 4 missed tackles forced.
And it felt like so many more than that. I mean, we highlighted in the preview, like, he just owns the Cowboys. He
just looks so
owns
fast out there.
The Cowboys.
And you have a comment here you wanted to add on to the Aaron Jones thing about his blitz pickup?
Yeah, I thought he blocked really well in this game too. Specifically, I think it was one of the two
Micah
big
Parsons.
plays. Yeah, but it was one of the 2 big plays to Dobbs, where Parsons beat Zach Tom on one of the few times he actually got the better of Zach Tom on the night. And then Aaron Jones, all bless him, 190 pounds of him, just pops Micah Parsons and stops him in his track. And he has to come out of the game because he got hit in the ribs
Micah
so hard.
Parsons checking his ribs after that game.
Yeah,
after that play.
And, Aaron Jones is not a big guy. And Micah Parsons is one of the best defensive players in the league. And there was another, not blitz pickup, but it was a stunt pickup where the line got a little confused that Jones picked him up as well. And so, I mean, practically perfect game from Aaron Jones in this one. He was unstoppable. And the thing is, it was weird because, the first drive of the game, they were running the ball really well. And then the second and the third drive, they were so close to the end zone that it didn't matter as much. But, the run game stalled out for a bit. And then in the second half, they just imposed their will on the ground over.
It was mostly just
over again.
Yeah, the run game was mostly like the touchdowns in the first half, and then they just started piling up the yards in the second half.
And that's why I wanted to shout out the offensive line. I know I talked about, some of the pass blocking numbers I think are maybe a little maybe misleading, because while they, no sacks, Micah Parsons held the 1 pressure on 19 pass rushes, which is awesome, the lowest pressure rate of his career, like we talked about. And so when you're focused on taking away, don't let a star player beat you. We talk about that all the time. We talk about how that went very poorly for them against the Raiders. I'm sure we'll talk about that next week against the Niners, but they did not let a star player beat them in the pass rush. And, they did still allow 7 pressures on 21 dropbacks, which is not very good in terms of pressure rate allowed, like pressures per dropback. But in terms of run blocking, I talked recently or briefly just before this about how Jones had 2.5 or 2.55 yards before contact per attempt, and how that would only be behind Achane and Keaton Mitchell on the year. And to me, what makes this more impressive, and these numbers are also per PFF, just like those last ones, is that 15 of Jones's 21 carries, so 71% of them, were between the tackles. And you can contrast to the 2 guys who were ahead of him in yards before contact, where Mitchell, only 55% of his are between the tackles, and Achane only 44%. So those yards before contact, like on top of good play calling from LaFleur, was the line just moving and out leveraging people up front all day long. And just so the Cowboys are a smaller team. They play like a really small linebacker. I think they're saying Marquise Blair's their linebacker, and he was a safety at Utah, if I remember correctly. He's only like 210 pounds. So you can run up the middle and between the tackles on them. But at the same time, offensive line and Aaron Jones and Matt LaFleur, I think 3-way tie for credit for what they were doing there on the ground in this game.
Yeah. Well, plus, they got off to a little bit of a slow start. He had, I think, success on 13 of his 21 carries, but the first 2 didn't go anywhere.
The first 2 I remember watching, I was like, okay, Myers gets blown up. Okay, Rasheed Walker gets blown up. Okay, all right, we're doing the thing again.
Yeah,
cool.
I guess it was the second run of the game where Walker gets kind of spun around and knocked into him.
Yeah, I don't think he even got spun around. He just got shoved straight backwards into Jones. And so one of my friends I was watching it with was like, butt fumble. I was like, no, please. None of that.
Don't speak
He's
that
holding
into
on
existence.
to it. But no, yeah. And then they settled in. They settled in really well. So, I mean, awesome stuff from the offense. I have, more stuff we could talk about. The main things I wanted to highlight, though, were Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur, and this offensive line. Dad, did you have any other positives that you wanted to talk about on offense?
So Romeo Doubs was just amazing. So going into the game, Can I say one thing? Last week, This man was coughing up blood in the hospital. This is true. He was like, "This okay." So somebody needed to put like the Undertaker made for Dobbs in this one, sitting up.
Yeah, he's like, and I'm back. I think it was his first 100-yard game of his career, right? Is
It
that,
might have been certainly of the
think
season,
so.
but
I think
it might
it's easily
be. I
his.
think it's of his career. So coming into today's games, he's leading all wide receivers in PFF receiving grade in the playoffs so far, with a career high of 93.2. Caught all 6 of his targets, 25.2 yards per reception, which is also 25.2 yards per target, which is bonkers. And he was third in the league in yak with a total of 57 yards.
That was
5 first downs and a perfect passer rating when targeted.
And a touchdown on top of that as well. Just to,
touchdown.
Tag that on.
But I wanted to say,
just to touch on the yak for a second. Has he
it's
always been this fast?
He's ever looked in his career.
I've never seen him look this fast.
When he had those long passes. He just, the defender who was guarding him gets left in the dust after he catches the ball.
Yeah, he's just pulling away from him. And I remember we talked about when he was drafted and his rookie years, like, oh yeah, his Senior Bowl, like zebra times, like he has like one of the highest like top speeds. Like at the Senior Bowl, like he can really hit an awesome top speed, like when he has like time to ramp up. And I mean, we saw today they could not like was.
Who was that? What's his name? It was like Lewis. I can't remember who the.
I might have been Jordan Lewis, yeah, but he had 2 different catches
going up the right side, and then there's another one too.
But 2 different catches where he had more than 20 yards after the catch. So one where I went for 39 total, and 23 of those were yak, and another where I went 46 and 21 of those were yak. He also had the invisibility cloak that Bo Melton had against the Vikings because they just kept losing him. They just kept losing him
in the middle of the field all by himself. As you mentioned,
go ahead.
He had his 5.1 average. This ties into his almost 5.1 average yards of separation. That's in the middle of the field.
Yeah, and the thing is,
he was second in the week only to Travis Kelce, and it's better than anybody's season average what he had this week.
But so I just wanted to also touch on, so he had those big plays where he turned like awesome separation into massive big plays. So like when you have that separation, you want to be creating these huge explosive plays, which he did. But also 2 plays that pop out as well beyond that are the big 2nd and 16 after the hold, or the first. Am I stealing your thunder? Go ahead.
It's right in my head. It's right in my notes.
Okay,
contested catch at the 1 yard line was a low. Here, I'm reading it word for word of what I written there. Yeah, it's that catch after they've given up the holding penalty to go, first and goal from the 16, which is always hard to get into the end zone from. That contested catch at the 1 yard line, I felt was a low key critical point in the entire game when they were only up 7-0 at the time.
Yeah,
and to make it now 2nd and goal at the 1 for a high probability of scoring a touchdown instead of very low.
Another
first and goal in the 16.
Excellent throw from Jordan Love. Another excellent throw from Jordan Love. I mean, we also every single time we said we got to be like, and Jordan Love was also out of his mind in this game. He was blacked out the whole game, going crazy. Sorry, go ahead.
And then his touchdown catch?
Yeah,
play was the throw was insane.
I was going to say the throw, and we got to say it again. Jordan Love was out of his freaking mind in this game.
I can't believe how he slipped that through, but it also was good concentration. But Dobbs has it changed direction 3 times in the air to get around all the defenders to him.
Yeah, and like I was watching like a breakdown that Kurt Benkert, former Packers quarterback, had online, and he was talking about usually so Dobbs there like picks the guy. And usually you're supposed to, like, after you set the pick, continue out. But because he saw 2 guys already where he was supposed to go, he just kind of stopped and he was like, okay, like, I'm open right here. I guess I'll just wait and, like, hold the space. And that was exactly what that play needed. That was what that play required. And so if you were ranking Jordan Love impressive throws, that one is 1 to me.
That was my favorite throw of the game. That throw was absolutely bonkers because he's going to his right, slings it sidearm back to the left, slips into this tiny window between past 2 separate defenders to get.
You know what I saw multiple people call that? The car wash throw, where if you had thrown it through a car wash,
was it wet when it gets through? It
wouldn't get wet. Yeah, exactly. But the second best is the Wicks touchdown. That's number 2 for me.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm putting third. It's one of the Dobbs throws, probably. Although actually, it might be the one to Kraft on the left sideline. Like the left, when he's rolling left, and it looks like a play that's designed for Wicks to come across the formation and a little dump off and take some yak, and then Wicks gets caught up on the DN. And you see Love look at him, and he's like, I can't throw that. And then he looks further, and he just rifles it into Kraft, like right in the bicep. I mean, oh man, what a freaking game. What a fun game. It was
This was a lot of
48-16 with 6 minutes in the fourth. I mean, what a fun freaking game. But Dad, there were definitely any other positives on offense because I had a couple negatives.
Well, there's the blocking you talked about a little bit, and I just wanted to give Rasheed Walker a little shout out. After the first 2 days of the playoffs, he led all offensive linemen in pass blocking grade and gave up 0 pressures on 22 pass blocking snaps.
Not bad.
And Zach Tom had his best run blocking grade of his career at 91.4.
Yeah,
and I think first elite run blocking grade of his career, and the highest run blocking grade in the playoffs so far.
Yeah, this is something I wish I had looked at, but I just want to get. It felt like we were doing a lot more heavy personnel in this one, right? I saw more DeGuara than I was used to, a lot more DeGuara than I was used to.
I saw him in a little bit. I can't say I really noticed what he was doing.
I saw a lot of like snaps with Musgrave and Kraft out there.
Yeah.
I was just wondering what you thought about in that, and if you like felt that way as well, that they were doing a lot more heavy personnel sets.
I have to say I wasn't really on top of that. I was looking at some points later in the game, I was looking at who the skill positions were. And there weren't that, and I did notice a couple times, there aren't that many receivers out right now. But I wasn't picking up on who the tight ends were. But I think that is actually what was going on.
Yeah, so just I checked it really quick on PFF. 45 snaps for Tucker Kraft, and then 15 for Musgrave, 13 for Sims, and 10 for DeGuara, which I feel like is a high for DeGuara in a long time. I feel like I haven't seen him take that many snaps in quite a bit. But I think it seemed like a conscious effort. Be like, hey, the Dallas defense is small. Let's just go up there and bully them. Let's just take it to them. And I mean,
they may have also wanted the extra blocker potential for the pass rush.
And also, a lot of that game was a, very positive game script for the Packers. So a lot of extra, probably heavy personnel just running the ball, too, to be fair.
Yeah.
But Dad, there were definitely a few negatives on offense in this game. To me, the one that stood out the most was any time that they had to hand the ball off to not Aaron Jones. It was not great. Non-Aaron Jones running backs, so that's Emmanuel Wilson and Patrick Taylor in this one, had 11 carries for 26 yards with a long of 7 yards, 2.36 yards per carry. Just a 36% success rate would be worse than the worst team in the league this year. Not great. And gained 1 or fewer yards on 6 of 11 carries. So anytime
shows how good Jones is, or was, or at least was in this game.
I think it also shows how much they miss Dillon. Because I think they really missed having Dillon as a more reliable second running back. But it is also true, that's just how freaking good Aaron Jones is. I mean, yeah, it's a crime he only has 1 Pro Bowl in his career. A crime. It's inexplicable, actually. When you really think about how good he's been in this league for how long he's been in this league. But Dad, that was really the only negative I had on offense. The other thing is, the pass blocking, 7 pressures on 21 dropbacks, like we said, not great, but you held Micah Parsons, so I'm going to call that a push. What did you have in terms of negatives on offense?
Yeah, so I'm nitpicking a little bit here, but the run blocking by anyone other than Tom was generally poor. Runyon was slightly above average, and everybody else was below average, including, rotating. They had a little bit of rotation going in there, maybe when they basically pulled out every starter. Speaking of which, I'm calling it a bad thing for LaFleur, increasing my nervousness during the game by taking out basically all the starters with 6 minutes left. Not just Love, not just saying, okay, we'll take our starting quarterback out. They put in all the backup linemen as well.
I think
running
though,
backs.
it was fine. It just felt bad. Because
it felt bad because it was so quick. They basically got 2 touchdowns like a minute and a half apart.
Yeah, but it still didn't really. I mean, it kind of mattered, but it didn't really matter.
I'm just talking about how I felt.
How you felt. Fair.
I thought it was unfair of him to cause me stress.
Fair. Anything else on negative? Because speaking of how go ahead.
And then Reed, he got shut out on 3 targets, but I'm really nitpicking here because everybody else was doing work.
Yeah. The speaking of how things made us feel, though, there was one thing that made me think, and I was a little surprised to see Malik Heath as the odd man out in the wide receiver group right now. So he was inactive in this game to make room for Watson, who was making his return. That was the only thing that made me think. It's like, it seems like he is the low man on the totem pole, so to speak, in the receiver room. And I mean, it's a good problem to have, but he's been good this year. So, it's a little tough to see him be inactive on game day.
Yeah, it looks like then, Melton has moved ahead of him in the depth chart.
That's also something to know. And we kind of felt that because, Bo Melton led the team in snaps at receiver last week. So, and Bo Melton's pretty good. But yeah, so I thought that was interesting at least. Anything that struck your, like, in terms of
made me think, you're like, okay, Watson was in there. He only had one catch on one target, but you should watch the tape and like 3 Cowboys defenders around him while, opening up a chasm around
why
Dobbs.
Why do you think Romeo Dobbs was so freaking open all night? Because 3 dudes were running with Christian Watson.
They
on every
remembered
play.
what happened to them last time Christian Watson played against them.
Yeah, and that's the thing to keep an eye on because, we'll talk about it in the pregame, so I'm not going to worry about it. But, keep an eye on if anything happens with those Watson, deep routes next week. But we'll give you all the scoop on that in the upcoming pregame. Dad, anything else on offense you wanted to touch on, or should we move on to defense?
I think that was all the notes I had.
Okay, defense. What are they saying?
So this is what LaFleur had to say, and this was per an article from Jason Wilde.
I think it's Wilde, yeah.
And LaFleur said, I couldn't be happier, LaFleur replied when asked why he stood by Barry and if he saw the defensive turnaround coming. I know that what Barry is all about in terms of resiliency. There's been tough moments, and there's been tough moments in every season. I feel like I know what we have in him, and I was confident that if anybody could right the ship, so to speak, it was him. And they played well.
They played very well.
Like, so what is it? That, like, LaFleur knows that he. What is it that LaFleur knows that he can say you're going to play the defense this way when he has time to take away from the offense?
I actually think that that's part of it.
Isn't that this? I hear a lot of people voicing this opinion that the only reason Barry's there is because LaFleur can tell him what to do.
I don't think Barry should be the defensive coordinator next year. I think he is past the line of demarcation of if the season ended today, he would be back. Is how I feel right now. If they get embarrassed by San Francisco next week, we're back on to I don't think Barry would be here. But I think, he is at this point, if the season were to end today, like they were like, we're canceling the rest of the season, he would be back next year. Don't you think?
Oh, right now without,
that's what I'm saying. Like, let's say there's no more additional data. You don't get any more data. You just called it today. I think he would be back.
Based on that quote, then I would say yes. I was thinking that they would really need one more good game against San Francisco. That the San Francisco game is this a make or break game?
I'm not talking about like what should happen. I'm talking about what I think is going to happen, and I don't think it needs to be a great game from the defense. To be honest, like I don't think his.
What if he gets?
If it's really bad, like Mike Pettin 2019, like Niners, yes, or even Tampa Bay versus the Packers in 2020-2021 season, then yes. But I think, he's at the point where if they just have a fine defensive performance next week, then I think he's back. And I don't necessarily know that he should be, but I just think that's where we stand right now. But do you disagree? Do you feel like something else?
Just a couple of weeks ago, I thought he was for sure gone. For sure gone. And is 2 weeks enough to change that? A sure gone.
I mean, we can talk about, them getting soft at the end and giving up those scores. The defense was incredible in this game. I mean, it just was. It was very, very good.
So
it was very good.
Let's get on to the defense then. Let's talk about this game.
Well, let's start with the negatives so we can end on some positives. The negatives were, and this kind of ties into, why I think, Joe Barry did a pretty good job, is they did not get pressure on Dak in this game. And usually that's been the formula for this defense is like they need to get sacks or they will never, ever get a stop. And that wasn't the case in this one. They struggled to get pressure on Dak, and that is a bad thing, all in all. Yes, he was pressured 17 times, but he dropped back to pass 70 different times, like 70 times. So it's only a 24% pressure rate, which is the third worst pressure rate Dak has had on the year. And that's the Giants twice on that list, and then the Rams once. But at least in those, he had a lower time to throw, just 2.11 seconds, 2.68 seconds, and 2.78 seconds, respectively. In this game, he had over 3 seconds to throw the ball on average. That
was the exact same thing I had about the 3.01 seconds he had to throw in this game. And on the season, his average is only 2.72, and he only had one game with more time to throw than this game. And that was against the Chargers when he had it was some crazy number. But he also had a 90 PFF grade in that game.
Exactly. And in this game, I know a lot of these numbers are skewed by garbage time, but you can twist it around just the other way and be like, hey, they had to pass. You just need to pass rush. So it's also a benefit to the pass rush in this game that you should be able to just tee off on him. and they weren't able to get home. And I know Dallas's, offensive line is pretty good. But at the same time, the right tackle is really bad, and the Packers were never able to really take advantage of that weakness on the line, I thought. So that was my negative. And then the other was, the third down defense was pretty bad. Cowboys end up going 10 of 16 on third down and then had another converted by a penalty. Even taking out garbage time, so I'm just going win percent less than 1% for the Cowboys. Still 4 of 8, and then 1 converted by penalty, which isn't horrible considering that Dallas had the second best third down offense in the league per team rankings. And all these numbers, this time to throw and these pressures are PFF, just to reference that. So Dallas's offense was very good on third downs, but it's still not a great showing on third down, especially when they're passing for most of the time. But Dad, what negatives did you have for the defense?
I mean, that was the main thing, was the pressure that we were talking about. And I had kind of the same notes that you did about the time to throw in particular. Though in some ways, that's a little bit of a positive because I think the coverage was actually playing pretty well.
I have some fun coverage numbers. Are you ready for them? Or do you want to talk any more about negatives? Because I have some fun ones.
What do we have overall? I was thinking about the run defense. I have some good stuff. The run defense was okay, kind of middle of the pack.
You say that. I initially was like, oh, wow, we defended the run really well. But we let them, their success rate was 50% or higher, I think, for the day, which is a very high success rate running the football. And even if you take out garbage time, it was that high. So we held them down in terms of I think the longest run we allowed on the day was 11 yards. We only gave up 4.1-ish yards a carry. But when they needed to, move the ball running the football, they were able to do it. We just got them into kind of a script where they couldn't. So because I initially felt watching the game, I was like, oh, run defense doing pretty well. But it was really just kind of an run performance on defense, in my opinion, looking at the numbers.
All right. I guess there's one of the things Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, we can't guard tight ends.
We could not guard Jake. And we brought it up before the game. Tight end coverage, yeah. How many touchdowns? Three touchdowns? Did he have toasting us.
Goodness. Yeah, I guess he did, huh?
He was toasting us in the red zone. So that's a negative there, that we could not cover him in the red zone.
Yeah, but thankfully he didn't really get going until the second half when
it was during garbage time.
Yeah.
After we were up by a bazillion points. But you still don't like to see the same player getting 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But Dad, let's move on to some positives though. What'd you have as a positive on defense?
So this was their second best tackling game of the year per PFF. And there are several, some individual plays that come to mind. One particularly, I remember just saying when Nixon was able to get that open field tackle for a sack on Dak, it's man, that's a good tackle. I think I texted you and Eli about it's man, that was a great tackle. And we talked about. I was the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the TV. I was like, that right there, that's that good stuff. There. That's it. Yeah, that's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
In Hollywood,
right?
Yep, yeah.
And they only had 4 missed tackles on the game out of 81 attempts. It's their second best percentage.
They are going
the Rams
to have
game where they only had 2 out of 49.
They're going to have some tired legs because they played 89 snaps on defense in this game or something.
With the garbage time being so extended, they had a crap ton of
snaps running around out there.
Of snaps with the pass plays that the Cowboys are running. And also, but another thing, if you filter out the garbage time plays, Green Bay's defensive EPA per play was a score of negative 0.7, which would have been which is among the top 6 single game performances on the season. It's 6%. So it's out of 544 defensive games.
And it certainly
which includes all the games against some really crappy teams too, that should be filling up those good scores.
It doesn't hurt to get a pick 6 there. That's all I'm going to say. You're getting a lot of expected point added swing on a pick 6
when you get it when your defense actually scores points.
Yeah, for me, the biggest positive on the day though was just the coverage and the secondary, like we were talking about just now. I mean, the most telling statistic here is separation once again, also per Next Gen Stats, which is separation allowed per target. League average for reference is 2.95 yards. Packers held CeeDee Lamb to 2.24 and Brandon Cooks to 2.71. And the only players that were above average were Michael Gallup at 3.05 and Jake Ferguson at 3.27, who we already talked about. was, Packers kind of struggle with. But in terms of their two top receivers, Packers were all over them all game. They made plays on the ball. Green Bay had a total of 6 passes defended and 2 interceptions with that. Jair Alexander, that pick was crazy. That's like star players making star plays.
He just basically bullied Brandon Cooks for that ball.
Oh, yeah. Big-time players making big-time plays right there. And then Darnell Savage, per Next Gen Stats, he was the fastest ball carrier in, I don't know why I said it like that, ball carrier in Week 19 on his interception, which, fun stuff.
I was trying to add that note, and I saw you've already got it in there.
Yeah. I mean, the secondary, Dad, they played out of their mind. They were playing really well.
Yeah, the coverage was excellent. Like, CeeDee Lamb they practically put him on a milk carton.
Yeah, 7 targets and just 2 catches in the first half. Just clamped up, and to the point, they were getting clamped so hard that they were having organizational meltdowns on the sideline on national television because they were getting clamped down so badly for the first half.
The announcing team was talking about, what's wrong here the whole time.
Did you see the thing that someone said we need a camera of Jerry Jones in the skybox like they have for Taylor Swift, but just in the bottom corner of the screen, and it's just Jerry Jones going crazy during the game? Someone said, put that on my TV right now.
Oh, this would have been a great game for that.
Yes, it would. I mean, wow, what a fun game. Every time I think about it, what a fun game. But Dad, anything else you wanted to say about the defense? I had a couple things that caught my eye, but no other real negatives or positives.
I had something that made me think, but it's also a positive. So, since Week 13, the team coverage PFF grade is so much better in the games that Savage has played. So he played, I think, 13, 14, and Week 17, 18 in the playoffs, and he missed 2 weeks in there.
I know overall, the ones he missed. I know which 2 those were.
Yeah. Yep.
Tampa and Carolina.
Both of them gave up over 30.
Yeah.
In the 5 games Savage has played, the coverage grade for the defense is 67.2. In the 2 he's missed, the defensive coverage grade is 39.7 when he was out. And the points per game when he played is 18.8, and that's even counting this 30-point mostly garbage time game. But the 2 he missed, the average is 32. So it's 2 touchdowns better, and the coverage grade way better. So Savage is making a big difference on how well the whole unit plays. It looks like anyway.
I can't tell if he's making a big difference or he picked the perfect 2 games to not be available for, because I don't think you can say it all you want, but I don't know about just putting Savage in that lineup and that fixes everything in those
all
2
the problems
games.
In those 2 games, and they would have won
I do think it's a big deal that he is actually a positive impact player on the defense now, I feel like, as opposed to last year where at times it felt like he was a liability, and he was benched for a stretch last year as well. So it's good to see him positively contributing and back on the field. The only thing that really made me think on defense, though, in this one was the linebacker rotation. They were using Isaiah McDuffie on rundowns before he got hurt and bringing in Campbell just for obvious passing situations. That was kind of weird. I can't say it didn't work, but I don't know.
Duffy's been playing mostly pretty well on rundowns. Then he got hurt, and then they had to, and they brought, I think, Eric Wilson in for some of those downs. And
Campbell's been mostly not playing very good, unfortunately. I think he's still hurt, but I don't know. I don't know. They kind of need McDuffie a little bit, especially
it would have been nice
coming down
Campbell
the pipe.
Almost, he got in good position, but couldn't come up with
that pick. I thought he was going to get it. I really thought he was going to get it, but it is what it is. Anything that made you think on the defensive side, or should we wrap things up with special teams?
That was what I had to think is sort of how is Savage really making the whole defense better? Guess we'll see. Hopefully, all the rest of the games he's available for, and their defense is great in all of them.
Why not? Hey, but let's move to special teams. So what did you have here? I have a couple things, but I'll let you go first.
So they had 2 punts inside the 10-yard line, so that's good.
Yeah.
They did give up the 1 big kick return, and the 2 onside kicks, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is
an adventure.
Yikes. One went right through the wicket, almost on Reed, and the other one is just rolling along, and it's getting closer and closer to that 10-yard mark. Who was it who dove on it in the end?
It was Reed, I think. There are a few things that make me as nervous as the watermelon onside. Because it looks like, okay, don't touch it. It's not going 10 yards. Don't touch it. And then right at the end, it's starting to squeak past 10 yards, and you have to make
then you got to grab it really fast.
Decision. Is the move just to punt it out of bounds as hard as you can?
I was thinking about the same thing. If you just knock that thing out of bounds, then it's over.
But what if you hit it and it just ricochets off a guy and you mishit it, and then you look like an idiot? So I don't know.
Yeah. But I would give some shout out to Musgrave where he fell on that ball and got to him. And the first one, and that nobody was near him for the Cowboys.
Yeah. That was like the perfect onside too. I was like,
so they were saying that the blocking, I didn't get a chance to look at it to see how well the receiving team kind of blocked it up to keep him clean to fall on that ball.
But I think that is part of the reason those traditional onsides don't work as well, because you can't get a running head start. And so it's hard for you to get there, even if you execute it well. Famous last words, obviously. But for me, I thought it's interesting. So initially, watching the game, I thought the kick coverage was really bad. But then I went through all of them. They kicked 8 times. Their starting position on 7 of 8 was a touchback or less, which isn't bad. They did allow 5 of the 8 to be returned. They only put 5 of the 8 into the end zone. 1 went to the 1 yard line, 1 went to the 2, and 1 went to the 3. They let another big return up, but there was a penalty. So who knows? Maybe that penalty was the reason it was a big return. I just wish they would kick it through the end zone. I almost think that they just don't want to. I think it's on purpose at this point that they're trying to put it right at the end line and make them return, because Bisaccia can point to this and be like, hey, 7 out of 8 times they had a worse field position than a touchback. And my counter would be, but the one time they didn't, they got it out to what was it? I had it here. They got it out to the 45 on a 47-yard return. And that was why they were able to score at the end of the first half. And that was what gave them life going into the second half. It could have been over pretty much. But you breathed a little life back into them because you decided not to kick it through the end zone, or because your kicker can't kick it through the end zone. And I don't know which is worse.
Which is, he's supposed to have this big leg. How about we just put it try to kick a field goal from the kickoff every time. I'm tired of this having the ball die at the 1 or the 2.
Yeah, so I still don't. The kickoff coverage was not as bad as I thought. The kickoff plan I don't love. I mean, I understand you kind of put it in the end zone 5 of 8 times, but 2 of them were just negative. They're barely in the end zone. And I get that Turpin's a pretty good returner and the Dallas special teams is pretty good, and they're going to want to return a lot of these. And you mostly held them down. I mean, they ended up starting 1 possession at the 14 and 1 possession at the 12, but the 12 one was just because of penalty as well. But you forced that penalty, so that's something. So I didn't like the plan on kickoffs. And then the missed PAT. I mean,
can we get credit for forcing a missed PAT by getting that penalty to push him back?
I do think, I don't know. I mean, at least he misses the ones that are worth 1 point and not 3. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what else to say on that one. But yeah, and then like you said, the punting was good. But Dad, let's wrap things up here. Player of the game. I think there's only one answer.
Pretty obvious. I didn't care that you already put this down. Let's put it down anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. Jordan Love.
I mean, all day Love.
Honorable mention, Aaron Jones.
Honorable mention, Aaron Jones.
Yes,
Cowboys owner, Aaron Jones.
I mean, Cowboys. Yeah. I mean, he had all his family in attendance too. He threw his first touchdown to his twin brother. It was very fun.
That's who he threw it to. They said he had requested over 20 tickets, I think.
Yeah, I mean, El Paso's far, but it's closer than any of the other games are. So, but anyway, this has been the Father Son Packers podcast. We will be here later this week to talk the pregame, previewing the game against the San Francisco 49ers in the divisional round. Who would have thought? Who would have thought we'd be here? Who would have thought? But anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you like what you hear today, I realized I forgot to give this spiel earlier. If you like what you hear here today, got so excited about the content of the beating the Cowboys. Come give us a follow on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We tweet out when we have new episodes out, stats that we find when we're doing research for these episodes, articles we find interesting by other Packers content creators, videos as well. Then we tweet out whenever there's new Packers news in terms of injury report and roster moves. But yeah, so just come give us a follow on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We'd really appreciate it. One-stop shopping for everything you need to know Titletown. And then subscribe to us on your podcast platform of choice, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. We even put all our episodes out on YouTube as well. If you want to subscribe there, it would really help our numbers. But yeah, come check us out. We'll be doing 2 episodes for the rest of as long as the regular season's going, 1 episode during the off season every week. Come, hang out and let's all just talk about the Packers and hey, go Pack, go.
Go Pack Go.